The meeting is live.
Thank you, and welcome to all our members, our public, our officers, and our registered speakers tonight on this rather chilly, dark November evening. Feels a lot different from the last planning meeting that I chaired. So you're very welcome. We'll move on to item 1, apologies for absence. Oh, actually, am I supposed to say? Oh no, I'll say that later. Apologies for absence have been received from councillors John Bishop, Mike Rice and Terry Tyler. And having given due notice, councillors George Davies and Michael Muir will be substituting. Are there any other apologies? No? Okay. So the second item on our agenda tonight is the election of a vice chair for the civic year 21-22. Our previous vice chair had to stand down. So can I invite nominations for the position of vice chair? Councillor Bryant.
Can nominate Ian Mantle, please.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Mike. Councillor Hewson.
Yep, happy to second. Chair.
Happy to second. Sorry.
Order.
Yes.
Councillor Mantle isn't a regular member of this committee, am I right? No. You are now, but not according to the minutes or the agenda published.
Okay, I believe that Councillor Mantle has taken the position of the Councillor Nguala, is that correct? So he is now a member of the committee. Does that satisfy your point of order? Okay, thank you. Are there any other nominations?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to propose Councillor David Levitt.
Do we have a seconder?
I'd like to second David.
Councillor Michael Muir, thank you for seconding. So I guess, are there any other nominations? No, okay, we'll take a vote then. How do we do this? Do we vote for one or the other, or can I take some advice on how we do this? Okay, let's, we'll vote for Councillor Mantle first. So if you would like to Councillor Mantle to become the vice chair, then vote yes. If not, you can vote no. So can we go to the vote, please, William? Okay, we have a problem with the voting pad. So we will take the vote again for everyone. So we're voting for Councillor Mantle. Mine hasn't come up either at the moment. Oh, they should be out now. Has everyone got their vote up? Councillor Mantle still got an issue. Will, is there a problem with the card or something? Okay. Okay, we'll take a pause while we just resolve this. Sorry, everybody. So we'll take that vote again then. So we're voting for Councillor Mantle as vice chair. Can I make a suggestion that we do, if it's not working, you put your hand up. So is there anybody else whose console is not working? Everyone else is fine. So has everyone voted that time round? Yeah, so, and Councillor Mantle's going to vote yes. Are you voting yes? Okay. So can we just add that one on?
Chair, that motion is lost.
Okay. So we're now going to vote for Councillor Levitt.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Okay, I hereby announce that Councillor Levitt is the Vice Chair for Planning. Okay, let's move on to item 3 then. The minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of September. Can I take these as read and approve as a true record of the meeting? Can I have a seconder? Councillor Bryant, thank you for seconding. All those in favour, do we vote on this as well? Yeah, all those in favour, so we're going to vote. Will you put your hand up and add to?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4, notification of any other business. There is none. Item 5, Chair's announcements. Audio recording. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recordings will be available to view on mod.gov and the film recording via the NHDC YouTube channel. Secondly, declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcement on the agenda. Thirdly, to clarify matters for the registered speakers, members of the public have 5 minutes for each group of speakers, i.e. 5 minutes for objectors and 5 minutes for supporters. This 5-minute time limit also applies to member advocates. So this means where there are 2 objectors, you have to share that 5 minutes. And there will be a warning at 4.5 minutes that you have 30 seconds left. Fourthly, break. When we get to around 9 o'clock, we will have a comfort break, but obviously we'll break after appropriately as after an item. And then lastly, order of business. So I've agreed to change the order of business. And I've decided that we are going to take item 10, planning appeals, first. And the reason for this is because some of the appeals that have been allowed, it has been referred to in some of the reports. So we felt it would be helpful for members to hear about the appeals, and for members of the public also to hear about the appeals. So I'm going to take item 10 first, and then the other items on the agenda. Item 8 is going to go next. Item 8 is going to go after item 9. So it's going to go 10, 7, 9, 8. Sorry to confuse everyone. Have we all got that? 10, 7, 9, 8. So can I confirm? So item 6 then, public participation. Can I confirm that the registered speakers are in attendance? They are? They're all here. Brilliant. Well, you're most welcome to our meeting. So let's move on then to item 10. I'd like to invite our Simon Ellis, our officer, to present item 10.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. On appeals updates, just looking at page 99 and 100, you can see that it's quite a very busy time for appeals with a lot submitted. And there's more in the pipeline that I'm aware of that are being held up due to delays at the planning inspectorate. So we are quite busy on appeals. And then the updates I have, other than what's already set out in the reports and the appeal decisions, is I've noticed from the minutes that we reported last time we were waiting for the Gladman's site to expire its time period for appeals. And I can confirm that that did expire. I think it was 12th of October, and we haven't had an appeal from the Gladman site in Royston. So, and we haven't had any approach from them either on an alternative application. So that's gone quiet on that site for the time being. On the big appeal decision, which I think is the Heath Lane Codicott appeal decision, you can see on there there's a costs award as well, a partial costs award. And we have received the cost claim this week, and we're examining it and looking at it to see whether or not it's legitimate. but it has come in at £43,000. And also you add in the legal and professional fees that we've had to spend to defend the committee decision, which is around £30,000. That could be a total bill of over £70,000 in legal and professional fees and a costs award against the council. So what we've decided to do in relation to that appeal and the 3 or 4 others on there that were committee decisions, particularly on the Greenbelt issue and prematurity, which was the Heath Lane decision, is, you remember we did a PAS training course last autumn. What we thought we would do is we'd invite them in again to do a training course, but what we thought we would do is get them to reflect on the training that they did in the autumn last year, and then to review some of the decisions that were made, watch the YouTube recordings, particularly on those occasions where those decisions were made that were then allowed on appeal, and to reflect their training on that and to give their unbiased, independent view of how the committee was structured and how it led to that decision. And that'll include a review of officers' role as well. So we'll get PAS to review all of that and then reflect that in some new training for the new year, so that it's seen as an independent process rather than officers just doing it in the way that we normally do. We'll probably still do our usual update, but that'll be later in the year as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get PAS to review some of those decisions and then reflect that in the next round of training to see if that can have more of an effect. Because I think their training last time was very useful, was a bit more generic, wasn't it? It was quite wide ranging. So we'll get them to do it on a local, using those case studies, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. And can I encourage all members and substitutes to do their best to attend that training? Obviously, other commitments allowing for that, but if we could try and make that a priority. And then just finally, what I wanted to just say on these appeals is that from the appeals that have been allowed, I think we can conclude that any site that is allocated in the local plan, even if it is in Greenbelt, we have to consider it as no longer the Greenbelt no longer being a justification for refusing it, because that has what's been allowed on appeal. So that's only for sites that are already allocated in the local plan. Otherwise, the Greenbelt thing would stand. But for those particular sites, I think we have to view it like that, because we're very close to adopting the local plan. Okay, so thank you for that. So we'll now head to our, Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. I think another thing that came out of that was, until we have a local plan in place, and as long as we haven't got a 5-year land supply, I think that was mentioned in pretty much all of those appeals, that we're on very sticky ground with any refusal at the moment that proposes putting housing in place. And I think that came out quite clearly in all of those inspectors' reports.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Hewson.
I was just wondering if Simon knew what sort of bill the council was facing this year due to appeals and costs awarded.
Can you respond, Simon? Thank you.
I'm just thinking, if you include enforcement, where we had an officer who wasn't able to attend, but that wasn't a committee decision, that was around £10,000. So the only cost award is the one I just referred to. And then the only one where we needed to go external was that one as well. And we were going to go external on the Royston. I'd already had consultants lined up, but that didn't happen in the end. So fortunately, that's something we don't have to fund at the moment. So all in all, we're looking at, if that 43,000 stands, we're looking at around 83,000 total appeal cost, but that includes 10,000 of it as an enforcement case as well.
Thank you. So let's move on then to item 7. And this is the Bell Inn, 65 High Street, Codicott, Hitchin. And I'm going to invite our officer, Andrew Hunter, to present the report.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Oh, Councillor Moody.
Sorry, I've got a vested interest. I called this in, so.
Oh, okay, thank you. So are you going to sit out of this one?
Do you want me to go outside, or?
Can you advise, please, Loretta, whether he can stay in the debate or not?
Sorry, yes, so if you could go to the members lounge,
Yeah,
I'm
fine.
assuming it's still available. It is not available, okay. Committee room 1 then, and we'll call you once the item is over.
Okay, thank you. So, Andrew, would you like to present the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just check that everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So to start things off, there are some updates that need to be reported. So firstly, there have been objections received from numbers 61 and 63 High Street and a former occupant of number 63, and I will provide a summary of the main points raised in those objections, which are that the new SWECO or SWECO foul and surface water drainage plan is flawed. The longevity of drainage mitigation measures, maintenance concerns, it doesn't address the potential for impacts on 63 and 61 High Street and for flooding to occur elsewhere. It doesn't address the volume of water in the basement of the bell, potential harm to the listed building number 63. The development is not in keeping with the conservation area. The unacceptable impact would not be addressed by a planning condition. The housing mix, the overlooking impacts from the car park, insufficient new details, and greater impacts from the high street. I do not consider that these raise any new issues that, we have also had a consultee response from the lead local flood authority by a letter of 29th October in response to the new drainage details submitted by the applicant by SWECO, dated 29th September. The summary of their response is that they consider that their previously recommended pre-commencement condition number 2 has been addressed, and this does not need to be included if planning permission was to be granted. And they recommend that if planning permission is granted, then conditions 1 and 2 in their letter be attached to any permission. This has the following. This results in the following amendments to the officer report, which is that condition 20 is removed, condition 21 becomes number 20, condition 22 becomes number 21, and condition 23 becomes number 22. And then lastly, condition 19 is amended to state in its preamble that the development should be carried out in accordance with the details in the drainage document by SWECO dated 29th September, and so that the precise wording would match that as recommended by the LLFA in their latest response. And that's the end of the updates. So I'll move on to my presentation now. So first slide, please. So this was deferred from the 2nd September of 2021 committee for the following reasons, which were to require a more detailed assessment of the impact of the proposed development on the Colleycott conservation area and further assessment of the surface water management aspects of the development, taking into account local flood issues. So onto the slides. So this slide is shows the site location in the context of where it is in this part in Colleycott, the conservation area boundaries, and where the closest listed buildings are in relation to the site. So next slide. This is an existing photo between number 63 High Street and number 65 The Bell. Next slide. This is a proposed photo montage of the proposed development from the same location. Next slide. This shows existing and proposed wider street scene photo montages. Next slide. These are photos of other parts of the Caldicott High Street and various developments. And next slide. This shows further photographs with some recent and slightly older developments. And last slide. This is a location plan of the photographs. And regarding the reasons for the deferral, in terms of the impacts on the conservation area, the new information and the photo montages have been considered by the council's conservation officer, who maintains that his previous opinion that the proposal is unobjectionable in terms of its impacts on the significance of the conservation area. And in terms of drainage and flooding, the lead local flood authority, the LLFA, have reviewed the new drainage details. They've recommended that the pre-commencement condition 2 has been satisfied by the new information, and they have recommended that it now be removed, as those details are considered by them to be satisfactory, and the LLFA maintain their lack of objections to the proposal in terms of drainage and flood risk. And it's considered overall that sufficient information has been provided in respect of the reasons for the deferral. Therefore, taking into account this and the relevant consultee responses, it is considered that the application can be determined, and the recommendation is for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Do members have any questions for Andrew? I can't see any. Okay, thank you very much then. In which case we'll move on to our registered speakers. We have two objectors, David Hainsworth and Catherine Gillings. Would you like to come and take your seats? So just to remind you that you have 5 minutes. Can they use the different microphones? Will that work? You both, okay. So you don't need to swap. You can just move seamlessly on. So you have 5 minutes between you, and I'll give you a warning there'll be a warning at around 4.5 minutes. So welcome to our meeting, and I invite you to address the committee.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak against this proposal. The applicants have not addressed, in our view, the planning committee reasons for deferment. The application does not, we believe, comply with government planning policy. This is the most important decision, I think, that you will have to make this evening. This is a large site in conservation area terms. It's surrounded by multiple listed buildings. It's located above a principal aquifer with a high water table. Listed buildings have interior wells and ponds surrounding the well, surrounding the bell, and going up and down the high street as well. Surface water flows from Berry Lane across the site. Water pools at the site entrance before any development even takes place. The bell basement is permanently flooded. I've kept an eye on it because someone has kicked the doors in where it goes down to the basement. And you can see that the water level is rising to within 600 millimeters of the ground level, and it descends to about 1.2 meters. So it's a variance with good and bad weather, normal good and bad weather of about 600 millimetres up and down that I'm seeing. And I've got photographic evidence to support that case. The proposed scheme represents overdevelopment in our view. The increase in building area is 67%. The housing mix density contravenes North Harts District Plan local plan policy HS3, and we think that alone is a reason to refuse. Proximity privacy contravenes the North Harts saved policy 57 on rear elevations, 15.8 metres at 63 High Street, 20 metres at 2A Berry Lane, when the policy is 30 metres or more on sloping ground. The land differential between my back garden and the site is 1.5 metres with no engineering support to prevent collapse from our garden, unlike number 2 Berry Lane. Overlooking is extreme for both 63 High Street and 2A. Again, I am going to suggest a reason for refusal. Height, scale and mass. Why propose a ridge of 8.7 metres when LPA approval for Berry Lane has 7.5 metres with, again, 2-storey, 3-bed properties? Building mass overbearing, dominant, intimidating, particularly on sloping ground, and architect images that you have provided via Andrew Hunter are actually misleading, and we have no datum reference points at all.
We've received some expert advice from SDP Consulting Engineers and Derek Lofty Associates Structural Engineers. The SUD scheme cannot be accommodated within the site within the red line boundary. The proposed engineering brick wall with 2 Berry Lane would redirect water into 62 and 61 High Street. It identifies areas, it increases the severe flood risk and will protect the new buildings. It identifies additional area of water storage to the rear of 61 and 63. The scheme fails to accommodate the Bell flooded basement, which is not accounted for in the water storage calculations. Insufficient detail has been provided to ensure the flooding does not occur elsewhere. The SUD scheme will undermine the listed building, undermine the curtilage of the setting and the fabric, cause water flood and seepage problems. The above demonstrate how the proposed SUD scheme will impact on the Grade 2 listed building 63 High Street. Refer to my legal document on the 31st of August. This is contrary to the National Planning Policy Framework, Chapter 14, Meeting the Challenge of Climate Change, Flooding and Coastal Change, Chapter 16, Conserving and Enhancing the Historic Environment. These are valid reasons to refuse this application. The National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 55, states that planning conditions should only be used where there is not possible to address the unacceptable impacts through a planning condition. How can these unacceptable impacts going to be addressed in a site that's severely restricted in space? The site is unsustainable. The Sierra SUDS manual says you shouldn't locate water storage above a high water table.
You have 30 seconds.
It causes pressure, buoyancy and seepage. It's contrary to the policy, the draft local plan HS3, the SAVE policy 57, Chapter 14 and Chapter 16 of the MPPF, and the documents are inaccurate, insufficient and inconsistent, and that's another reason you can refuse the drawings.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for our speakers? None? None at all. Okay, in which case we will move. Thank you very much. You may take your seats, and we will move to debate. Who would like to speak? Oh, I've got a speaker in support. Sorry. Deliberate error. Welcome to Mark Westcott, who's speaking in support. Again, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chair members, thank you for allowing me to speak again in support of the planning application that's before you this evening. I am Mark Westcott, a director at HCH Consulting and the appointed planning agent representing the applicant, Oldham Residential. I'm delighted to bring this scheme supported by additional information and still with no statutory consultee objections before you with an officer recommendation for approval. I hope that you recognise that Oldham Residential has gone to great lengths and cost to address the requirements that you previously raised. These were to provide visual street scene and photo montage information to enable an appreciation of the scheme from the high streets and thus relationship with the conservation area, and to provide detailed drainage information in accordance with the pre-commencement condition to satisfy the questions by members over the drainage capacity of the site and locale. To re-emphasise what your officers have reported, the Conservation Officer again holds no objection. Yes, it might be not be to his absolute preference, but he can find no objectionable grounds. Whereas the LLFA have confirmed its satisfaction with the detailed drainage strategy. The drainage strategy, therefore, is acceptable. It is worth pointing out that these technical consultees are competent, qualified, and impartial experts in their fields. The proposal is for 9 houses through a mixture of detached and semi-detached and terraced buildings with associated parking, landscaping, and refuge storage. It also includes the provision of 11 car parking spaces for the existing public house. Each dwelling will include large private gardens to the rears, which will be enclosed by fencing, landscaping, and planting. The proposed development will be up to 2 stories in height, much in line with the scale and height of the surrounding context. In planning terms, the scheme is policy compliant and will make a positive and efficient use of your underutilised previously developed land. It will also make a positive contribution towards North Hart's housing targets. The authority is unable to demonstrate the required 5-year housing land supply and continues to underdeliver new homes, with only 36% of its target being met since 2018. On this point, in recently allowing the Ash Hill land appeal at Heath Lane, the planning inspector noted, and I quote, "The housing context is of a critically inadequate and deteriorating 5-year housing land supply set against pressing housing needs. The proposal, no matter how small in housing numbers, will make a valued contribution towards rebalancing this context." The proposal is a well-designed scheme that preserves and enhances the conservation area. It improves the immediate setting of the adjacent listed buildings and overall makes a positive contribution to the character of Codicott. We have worked hard and collaboratively with officers to address heritage concerns, and as I've mentioned, and you know by now, it has no objection from the Conservation Officer, as well as the Landscape and Urban Design Officer and Historic England. In terms of parking, each dwelling will have 2 or 3 parking spaces, which complies with minimum parking standards. It will result in no undue impact on the local highway, and thus there is no objection from the local highway authority. Sustainability has been a key design objective. Measures such as highly insulated materials to meet the requirements of building regs and achieve energy efficiency, use of locally sourced materials to reduce carbon emissions from transport, as well as supporting local suppliers, low water consumption features, the incorporation of electric vehicle charging points, and additional landscaping leading to a biodiversity net gain have all been incorporated. The scheme will also deliver community benefits. Not only will it clear up the site, which has become a source of antisocial behaviour, but it will vastly improve and open up the existing public footpath. The footpath will be successfully integrated into the development, thereby removing its existing canalised nature and thus designing out the risk of crime and other such behaviour. To conclude, despite the proposal being in accordance with the North Harts local plan, because the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, the policies are out of date. Therefore, by virtue of paragraph 11D of the NPPF, in the absence of clear reasons or adverse impacts clearly or demonstrably outweighing the proposal's benefits, the tilted balance is engaged, and presumption must be given in favour of sustainable development. This is sustainable development. This sits on top of there being no statutory objections and your office's recommendation to approve. I therefore respectfully ask that you move to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for our speaker? No, thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Hunter.
Apologies, Chairman, I wasn't fast enough. And I think I'm sitting here and thinking it's probably an unfair question because it was mentioned earlier about the water storage calculation and that the Bell has a cellar full of water. I wondered if the applicant's agent would know whether or not that was taken into the calculation or not.
Can I invite our speaker to respond to that question?
Yes, thank you. I'm not technically well versed in drainage, but what I do know when it comes to drainage considerations, modelling, etc., ground level and water tables are taken into consideration. So I would very much expect that has been taken into consideration with regards to the modelling.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions from members? No? Okay, thank you very much. You may take your seat and we will now move to debate.
Chair, does the case officer get a right to reply to any of the comments?
Sorry, I'm 6 weeks. I haven't done this for 6 weeks. Forgotten how to do it. Yes, I'm going to invite Andrew to respond to any issues that have been raised.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Well, in response to, I think, what were the main points, the drainage runoff water from the development would flow away from 63 and 61 High Street to a sewer which is at the other southern end of the site. And again, there haven't been any objections from the lead local flood authority in relation to potential impacts on any nearby properties. The housing mix I consider acceptable for the area, and in terms of the 30-metre distance, that's a guideline in relation to privacy and overlooking, rather than a physical distance that new dwellings should be from existing dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. So let's move to the debate. Who would like to speak? Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Also, a couple of questions arisen probably for the officer from the representations there. Firstly, in relation to the drainage issue, I believe I understand now that from your summary at the beginning that the local flood authority has now said no objections and recommend approval based on the experts' report submitted by the applicant. Were the local flood authority also made aware of the experts' opinion that the objectors put forward on the inadequacies of that report? That's the first bit. Can we do that, and I'll come back to the second one, which is on a different issue.
Andrew, are you able to address that? We have, yeah.
I don't believe that they. I'm not sure if they have, if they're aware of the representations by the neighbours in terms of the very latest reports, but they have considered the very similar a detailed response by that same expert in considering how the proposal would affect neighbouring properties and the wider area in terms of drainage previously, and they have been satisfied that the proposal in terms of drainage and flood risk would not be detrimental to those neighbouring properties.
Thank you, Andrew. Can I invite Simon Ellis to?
Yes, if I may, Chair. When we consult any consultee, we advise them to review everything that's on the website. So we don't point anything out on the website, but the lead local flood authority would have been able to review anything that was posted on the website. So any representation on the website, together with any technical reports associated with that, that would have been available for the lead local authority to review. Whether or not they reviewed it, we can't possibly say. But in terms of procedure, that's not their their role to do that anyway. Their role is to review what the applicant provides, and then to advise that with their professional view as the statutory consultee, so whether that's satisfactory. But if that document that's been referred to by Councillor Levitt is on the website, then it would have been available for anyone to review.
Thank you, Simon. So, Councillor Levitt, your second question.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, I understand that. We do always say to objectors, if they can produce evidence, it is very helpful. So I want to be clear that evidence was available. The second question relates to the conservation area and the photo montage and the plans in particular. The conservation officer says in the report, I appreciate that it would be screened by the existing vegetation, so in lessening the impact. Now that existing vegetation is self-seeded scrub in the car park of the Bell Inn, and it is actually shown on the existing site plan submitted by the applicant. However, on the revised site plan submitted by the applicant, that vegetation has all been removed and the car park area has been cleared, opening up the aspect much wider than it is at present, with no vegetation, nothing in front of it, just a nice flat open car park, no fencing or anything. And I find that quite strange that you're relying on the vegetation that's going to be removed to provide the screening to protect the conservation area. Just comment on that one, please.
Andrew, are you able to comment?
I think my reading of our conservation officer's comments is that the reference to the existing vegetation screening is more observational rather than something that is a benefit in terms of potentially mitigating any impacts. So I think I would go back to the conservation officer's overall view that he considers the scheme unobjectionable in terms of potential harm to the conservation area. That's my view on that.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Would any other members like to speak? Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, Diwali's present at the moment with the fireworks. If I could ask our officer, Mr. Hunter, to could he expand condition 6 to actually take in part of the landscaping that's been taken out, to actually put some form of landscaping back in again?
Andrew, are you able to comment on condition 6?
Is this the condition that states the approved details
of landscaping? Yeah, approved details of landscaping shall be carried out. But I think what Councillor Hunter's asking is if that could incorporate the point that Councillor Levitt was raising. It's my understanding. Is that correct? Yeah. So that there will be more screening, as the conservation officer referred to. Is there any way we can enhance that condition or not?
I think well, looking back at the proposed site plan, that does show some landscaping in and planting, sort of roughly in that area, which would provide some level of screening, and it might also be that some of that vegetation is outside of the application site. I can't exactly be sure where it is. In which case, it might be the case that it may well be retained anyway.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Noranetta, do you want to comment?
It was just to say, condition 5 does ask for a.
Condition 6 we're talking about. Oh,
No,
condition 5 you're
five.
referring to. Yeah, sorry.
Does ask for them to submit an approved scheme beforehand and to tell the officers or whoever is going to be approving it what sort of screening will be done on site to be approved by the local authority. So that should hopefully cover that.
Chair, is it worth just displaying the site plan?
Yeah.
Lewis, can we get the site plan up again, please?
Yep, one moment.
We need an actual site plan.
Yeah, and there should be the actual site layout plan.
Site layout plan. I don't think it was in this presentation, but there must have been one on a previous. Maybe we haven't got that one available. Have we got that one available?
I'm just having a look at it, Chair. Is Councillor Hunter referring to the space behind the car park in front of plot 1?
Councillor Hunter, which space are you referring to?
Well, it came about by Councillor Levitt saying that the vegetation had been removed.
So is the High Street view, isn't it, that's
correct,
of concern?
yes.
So the High Street view is the gap between 63 and the Bell.
Yeah.
And then you've got that car park, and then you've got plot 1 immediately there.
Correct.
So there's a gap behind the car park in what is not a plot for residential development, and there's scope for additional planting in there, which could be an additional screening from the street scene view. So I think if we can note that and then incorporate that into condition 6, I think that's
the point I was trying to make.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
It could be expanded under
Absolutely.
the landscape brief.
We just needed clarity on where we were talking about. It's a shame we didn't have the site plan in the presentation, but just looking at it now, there's an obvious gap there where we can put in some additional planting through the landscape scheme.
Okay, can we agree to do that then? Does that satisfy your concern, Councillor Hunter? Okay, thank you. Councillor Muir.
Thank you. I'd just like the officers to take on board. We have done a climate change in this council, and for the last 18 months, all applications now have to have charging points for EV vehicles, but we need to go further. And I think our officers should discuss with all applicants for ground source pumps or air pumps so that no gas or oil central heating is done in the future. Just like that noted.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Muir. Councillor Mantle.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've actually got the electronics working by moving to a different microphone. I think that we must be very careful when we have professional advice and professional opinions from Conservation Area and Officer and the County Council Flood Authority in this case. We'd have to really be very, very careful to disregard them, because how on earth we would defend an appeal if we disregarded professional advice, I really don't know. But what I wanted really to say is I think it's always a concern that we talk about hiding development by vegetation. That shouldn't be the role of the landscape plan. It should be to complement the design of the actual buildings being proposed, and that we should be judging other buildings acceptable. And okay, so they might need some landscaping to complement them, to enhance them, but not to hide them, please.
Thank you, Councillor Mantle. Do I have any further speakers? No. Do I have any proposals
That it be accepted
that we accept the officer's
Accepted with all the-
recommendation to grant?
with
Okay,
all the conditions as laid out before us, especially bringing attention to condition 5.
okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor
I'm
Tyson,
happy to second.
thank you. In which case, can we please go to the vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. And thank you to all our speakers. You are welcome to leave now. If you wish to, you may stay if you wish to as well. And I think it's to leave through that door. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Derbyshire. We will ask Councillor Moody to join us. So we'll just take a brief pause while he does that. And that gives our speakers time to leave if should they wish to do so. Okay. Okay, we're just going to pause to let the speakers out. Thank you. Do we need to wait for Will to restart? Okay. We have a natural pause here. Welcome back, Councillor Moody. Okay, thank you, Will. Can we recommence? Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on now to item 9, which is the land at Windmill Close, Barkway. And I'm going to invite Simon Ellis, our officer, to present this report. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few updates and then I'll run through the slides. The first thing I need to update you on is unusual, and it's just been missed out on the report, is that I just need to mention the Herts County Council Growth and Infrastructure team just want me to mention that the indexation they use for inflation is PubSec 175, and I'm not sure why that didn't appear in the report. I noticed it appeared in Anne's, so but it didn't appear in mine. So that's just to confirm that. The lead local flood authority have surprisingly come back in time, and I didn't expect that, which is why I wrote the report in the way that I have. And they have suggested 3 additional conditions, and you'll notice that on page 94 I left space for this very eventuality, but wasn't expecting it to happen. And I'm not going to read the conditions to you because they're very long and technical, but I'll just give you a brief idea what they're about. First of all, the first condition they're recommending is that they want the drainage scheme to be undertaken in accordance with a certain specification. And then they want more detailed engineering drawings required to be agreed prior to commencement. That's the second condition. And then they want verification and checking reports to be agreed upon completion. So it's a complete belt and braces approach to sustainable urban drainage. And so I will add those 3 conditions into the recommendations at 16, 17 and 18. And if anyone wants me to find them and read them, I will do, but I don't think it's necessary. Barkway Parish Council continue to object to the development. They've submitted another representation. In their view, the local drainage system would not be able to cope with this development. It's a common theme here. So, and the other update I'm going to mention is I just want to tweak the wording of condition 6. It says on page 91, prior to the occupation of the development hereby permitted, the principal access road shall be provided 5.5 metres wide, with the side access road being 4.8 metres wide. And I want to cross out to include localised widening to 6 metres, to change that slightly to say to provide localised widening where possible up to 6 metres without encroaching onto plots 17, 18 and 19. Because the applicants pointed out that if you've had full compliance with that condition, you could possibly encroach onto those plots. To just tweak the wording of that so that it's widening where possible without encroaching into those plots. So that's the updates. Now I will go to the slides, please. Can I have the first slide, please? That shows you that's the GIS plan of where we are in Barkway. There's Royston Road. So it's quite a wide location plan. You can see Windmill Close as well. And then there's the site with the crosses. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is the location plan of the application sites. That's the red line of the site. And you can see it's in 2 sectors. And Chair, you mentioned this earlier at the briefing. Just to confirm, the biggest sector, the one with the building in the top left corner, that is land allocation BK2. And then the section below it is not in the land allocation, but is within the existing settlement boundary under the old local plan and within the new settlement boundary under the new local plan, and is currently open space. And you can see in the report I refer to the fact there is some development proposed on public open space. And then immediately to the right of that is the existing open space, which is maintained by the parish council. So that's the 2 sectors of the development proposal, and then the open space that adjoins it. Can I have the next slide, please? And there you see what I'm saying. You can see the line where the 2 sectors are that joins where the very end of Windmill Close to the bottom corner of that plot there called Tallard. So you can see that's where the current open space is, and that's development in there. That's quite a higher density development because it's closest to the village. That's where the affordable housing would be, as well as some other plots there just to the north of that access road. You can see there's a footpath link now from the development itself to the open space to the right, and that's in an amended plan that was required to provide a better form of access from the development and Windmill Close to the adjoining open space. And then the lower density development towards the north as you go up the hill away from the village, and that's the BK2 land allocation. Okay, next slide, please. And this is the plan of the affordable housing. That's plans for affordable housing on the existing informal open space. And those are the plans and elevations. And the next one, please. This is plots 15 and 16. Again, those are on the nearest part of the site to Windmill Close, the other side of the affordable housing that I mentioned. And the next one, please. That's plot 6 and 7. That's the house types. And next one, please. That's plots 10 and 11. And next one. Have we moved on? Sorry. Yeah, no, that's still plots 10 and 11. Next slide, please. So that's 3, 4. That's plots 3, 4, 8, and 13. I appreciate that you need to overlay that with the site plan to identify where those plots are. I'm just going through the plans that were on the website. Next one, please. That's plots 12 and 14. Again, there's a mix of house types, as you can see, but roughly similar scale and material palette and sort of general density. And the next one, please. That's plots 2 and 9. And that, I think, is the last of the elevation. So now I'll go through the photographs. The first photograph. That shows you the existing sort of very informal open space that would be the new spur road and also the affordable housing element of the scheme. I mentioned there's the two sectors. That's the first sector, the one closest to Barkway, and that's the informal open space. And you can see it looks across to the more managed open space, which is managed by the parish council. And those houses are on the back of Royston Road in Barkway. So next slide, please. It's a bit of a close-up of that open space. And I think this photograph is opportune because it enables me to draw attention to, if you look on page 89, the section 106 table, it includes a payment towards play equipment on the open space and upgrade of this area. And I think that there explains why that would be a useful sum to help upgrade some of the equipment on that open space, a new goal to start with. So the next photo, please. This is looking up the hill. This is the view. That's the entrance effectively to BK2 land allocation. So that's not open space. It's just open countryside, and it leads up to that telegraph pole that dominates the ridge further up towards the North Arts Plateau. Next one, please. And then you can see the other tower, which is further along. So again, looking west, aren't we, there, sort of northwest into the site from within the open space. Next one, please. That's the eastern boundary of the site, BK2. I'm taking that photograph basically exactly where the affordable housing would be constructed, looking out onto the land allocation. And that's the back of a building in a plot called Millcroft, that building there, you can see. Next one, please. And this looks to the back of the houses on Royston Road again. You can see the line there, that sort of 1970s, 60s housing along there. That's the back of Royston Road. Next one, please. And this is from the top corner. This is the highest part of the site. There's a strange wooden building in the field looking down across the village. So basically that's the other end of the land allocation. And you can see that it's on higher ground and looks down towards Barkway and Windmill Close. That should be the end. Oh no, here's one last slide. This is just showing us basically that's as you come in Windmill Close and you just start to turn the bend, you can see the curb. That would be the entrance to the site itself. And that's looking down to Windmill Close from basically where the entrance to the development would be. And that's it.
Thank you, Simon.
Oh no, another one. Just carry on. It's all right. You've seen that one. That's the end.
That is the end now, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Simon. Are there any questions for Simon from members? Thank you. Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quickie, Simon. The 3 new conditions about the flood stuff, can I assume that they'll be preempted, have at the beginning of them, no development shall commence until on those conditions, as they're saying quite specific about getting answers on drawings and that?
Can you confirm that, Simon?
I think the second one, the first one is a specification, so it just tells you what standard you need to deliver. The second one is no commencement because it's the detailed engineering drawings, and the third one is a post implementation, so it comes after the development, so sort of sequencing.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from members? No? Okay, in which case I will invite our registered speaker who is speaking in support of the application, Ryan Albone, to come and address the committee. Have I got the wrong one? Okay, well, I've got it written here on my notes. It's written on item 9. Sorry, that's not actually my mistake. But anyway, okay, so we have no speakers on this item. Is that correct? That is correct. Okay. So I don't need to ask the officer to come back on anything. So I think we can move straight to the debate then. Who would like to speak? Councillor Mantle.
Can I just be clear that the whole of this site under the new local plan is within the village boundary? Is that correct understanding?
Thanks, Simon. Can you clarify?
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. BK4 would then have BK2 would create a new village boundary of Barkway. So yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Only comment I would make on it is sad to see once again, the affordable rented social is in a block on the edge of a development rather than integrated into development as the NPPF recommends and as becomes part of it. I think we see this in the next application as well, a very similar thing. Sad to see that. However, you come into the thing, and I hate to use this phrase, beggars can't be choosers. At least we're getting some affordable housing and we're getting a development there. Although I would have liked to have seen it better, but I can't honestly find that as a reason to object it. So I'm happy to move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Levitt. Councillor Muir.
I was going to say I looked at the site today. From what I've heard from our officer, I have no problem in seconding this.
Thank you. So we have a proposer and a seconder to move the officer's recommendation. Are there any other members who would like to speak? No? In which Councillor Hunter.
Just a small point, Chairman. That is with the new 3 conditions and the amended condition number 6.
That is correct. Yeah. Okay, in which case, let's go to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Now, what is the time? The time is 8:20. Would we like to take a break? I see lots of shaking heads. Okay, in which case we will move straight on. Yes, if you'd like to leave that, you're welcome. Will, do you need to let them out or? In which case we'll take a slight pause while Will sees out our guests. Okay, it's just in the wrong place. Yeah, it was in the wrong place. My notes. Okay, are we all here? Is anyone else missing? I think we're all back, aren't we? Okay, let's resume then with item 8, which is land at and north of 68 London Road, Baldock. And I'd like to invite our officer, Anne MacDonald, to present the report. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. I have 4 updates I'd like to start with this evening. The first is that I've received 2 Labour representations. The first one has been circulated to members earlier today with a response from the council's legal manager this afternoon. This neighbour queried if the amended plans had been received other than those that were received on the 27th of September, which reduced the height of plots 22, 23 and 24 from 9.5 metres to 8.7 metres in height. I replied to this neighbour by email on the 1st of November confirming that no other amended plans had been received at that point in time, and that neighbours were not consulted on those amended plans as the change was not considered to be material to the scheme. The neighbour also queried the decision-making process given that the council as part landowner and queried technical documents. This representation is not considered to raise any new issues that are not already discussed within the committee report. The second neighbour representation received has misunderstood the email notifying about the date of tonight's committee meeting as a notification of amended plans. It asks for more time for responses to be submitted. However, this is not relevant or needed as the notification was about the date of the committee meeting. The third update is regarding the HDC Growth and Infrastructure Unit, and they've requested an amendment to the justification of the secondary education payment, changing the funds from being targeted solely towards the expansion of Knights Templar School, towards the expansion of Knights Templar School, or towards funding for a new secondary school to the north of the town, and the agent has agreed this change. The final update is that a further amended plan has actually been received today, which shows the reduced height of plots 22, 23 and 24 in cross section. This plan is going to be displayed as part of the presentation, and I'll identify it when it comes on the screen. If we could move to the first slide, please. Thank you. This shows the site layout of the development, which you can see is a sort of backland development surrounded by development on all four sides. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. This is the proposed site layout plan. As set out in the report, there is no objection to the development of the site as it does fall within the town of Baldock, as well as being an allocated housing site numbered BA7 in the emerging local plan. Key points to note from this design is the access is from Knights Court, and there's the creation of a street through the centre of the development with an area of open space. There's a pedestrian link to London Road, and mature trees are to be retained around the boundaries of the site, as well as the healthy mature trees within the development are also being retained. Each house has on-plot parking, with parking for flats as well, and visitor parking provided for the development as a whole. Each house has space for bin storage on plot, and a condition is recommended to provide cycle parking. Bin and cycle storage is already provided for flats. Each house has a private rear garden in excess of the council's amenity standards, as well as the open space area in the centre of the development, and each dwelling is in excess of the nationally described space standards. The design of the houses is reflective of local character, especially the houses in Clare Crescent. And as a result of all of these factors, the layout and design of this development is considered to be good quality placemaking and will provide for a high degree of amenity for future residents. Regarding the use of Knights Court access, the agent has confirmed that the applicant is the owner of this road from its junction with Western Way, and that Knights Court have a right of way over it. The agent confirmed that when Knights Court was built, services were laid underground to the site boundary with number 68 in anticipation of this site coming forward. The committee report acknowledges that the site will look very different compared to now from the neighbouring homes around the site. However, due to sufficient back-to-back distances, the retention of the mature trees on the site boundaries to provide some screening, and a lack of side flank windows to prevent overlooking, there's no objection raised on amenity grounds to the neighbours. Could I have the next slide, please? This shows the elevations of the block of flats forming plots 1 to 8. This block is next to Knights Court and forms the south side of the street into the development. This block is forming the affordable housing contribution and is all for affordable rented tenure. The council's housing officer supports this provision, which is considered to be in accordance with policy requirements. Next slide, please. This shows plots 9 and 10 to be positioned in the bottom of the site. Next slide, please. This is plots 11 and 12, and these form onto the back of Ashton's Lane. Next slide, please. And this is plots 13 and 14, and also back onto Ashton Lanes and form a plot group of 4 with the two houses we've just seen. Next slide, please. This is details of plots 15 and 16. Together, these have an appearance of one large house and back onto the houses in London Road. Plot 16 has the closest back-to-back distance with any of the existing neighbours at just under 29 metres, but the house is on an angle to the rear of number 58 London Road. The mature trees on the boundary to be retained to provide screening, and no objection is raised to this layout. Next slide, please. Oh, that's not meant to be there. But that's the amended plan that I received today. It's in the wrong location, so I'm not too sure what slides come out. Next slide, please. Great. This shows plots 17, 18 and 19, 20, which form a terrace of 4 in the northern part of the site. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is plot 21. which is a large attached house forming the north side of the street into the development. Next slide, please. And then this plots 22, 23 and 24, which are sited in the northwest side of the site. As previously stated, the design of the houses and flats is considered to be reflective of local character, especially the arts and crafts houses in Clare Crescent, and the palette of materials is also considered to be complementary to local character. There's now some photos to go through. Can I have the next slide, please? This shows the access point coming from Knights Court. The visitor parking on the left-hand side remains unaffected. The street light will be removed, and there's a condition to ensure this is relocated, not lost. Next slide, please. This is looking across from the access point with the houses in Western Way to the left and looking across to Clare Court Crescent in the north, where the roughly area where plots 22, 23 and 24 are to be located. Next slide, please. This is looking across the allotments part of the site, again with Clare Crescent to the north. Next slide, please. This is within the grounds of number 68, showing part of the buildings to be demolished, and the rear of the Knights Court, it can be seen in the background. Next slide, please. This is looking from Clare Crescent across the allotments end of the site towards Knights Court. Next slide, please. This is within the grounds of number 68, showing the greenhouses and parts of the old orchard to be removed. The application does acknowledge that there is a biodiversity loss, and off-site payment towards tree planting in the wetlands project at Ivor Springs is being provided as mitigation of this biodiversity loss. Next slide, please. This is the access into the old allotments within the site, with the rear of Clare Crescent in the distance. The mature trees, the rear of the houses on London Road on the right-hand side of the photo are to be retained. Next slide, please. This shows the existing access off London Road for number 68, which will form the pedestrian link. Next slide, please. And this again shows the levels plan to show the context of the site, because there is a levels change across the site and it shows how the ridge height's going to be lowering. Next slide, please. Similar context for viewing. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the application is recommended for conditional permission subject to the completion of the section 106. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I have one question. The pedestrian link, is that going to be a cycle and pedestrian shared link or just pedestrians?
No, cycle and pedestrian shared link.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Do any other members have questions for our officer? No? Okay, in which case I will invite our speaker, Ryan Albone, who's speaking in support of this application, to address the committee. Welcome. If you'd like to take your seat, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. This application seeks full planning permission for the construction of 24 new dwellings following the demolition of the existing property on this site, which is just over 1 hectare in size. This application is presented in joint names between Foxbury Developments Limited and North Herts District Council. Foxbury own the southern half of the site occupied by the existing house and own the Knights Court access road off Western Way. NHDC own the northern parcel of land, formerly allotments, which were last used in 2016. The entire site is allocated within the emerging local plan, soon to be adopted, we hope, under allocation number BA7, which is one of the smaller sites in the overall development plan for Baldock. We've spent a long time designing this proposal in front of you, exploring the prevailing character and design of properties in the surrounding areas. Following a pre-application discussion and meeting with officers last year, it was agreed that the final proposal as presented here is the right scheme for this site and aims to provide much needed high quality homes for local people. We represent a small local developer who work with a lot, and with each of our sites, we approach them from the ground up, not simply using house types or models which large volume house builders do. Rather, we design each property uniquely with independent features and qualities. The site's location is good, with Western Way Nursery, St Mary's Primary and Knights Templar Secondary Schools, including its sports centre, all within a short walking distance of the site. As well as this, local shops on Western Way and London Road are also easily reachable by foot. The High Street and train station are all also located within a 20 to 25 minute walk. Vehicle access to the site is to be fully served from the existing Knights Court access, which is a fully engineered junction approved by Herts Highways, who recommend approval of this scheme as proposed, utilising this entry. The existing driveway off London Road, which serves the existing property, is to be retained as a footway and cycleway connecting London Road with Western Way, allowing residents on either side a new shorter route through. This also removes the existing access onto London Road, which is a faster section of carriageway. The scheme provides 8 new apartments, which are designed as affordable rented plots. In condition of the sale of NHDC's land and due to the climate change threats, it was agreed that these apartments would have an enhanced specification with regards to sustainability. Whilst the technical requirements are yet to be finalised, this will likely include triple glazing, increased insulation levels, EV charging to all plots, reduced water usage, and solar panels with battery backup. In terms of planning policy, the proposal complies with both the outdated 1996 adopted plan as well as the emerging plan given its advanced status. The scheme is also compliant with all supplementary planning guidance as well as the MPPF. As all members know, NHDC are under pressure with their 5-year land supply, which currently stands at 1.5 years. The site is allocated in the emerging plan, and without a road in Greenbelt, is an easily developable brownfield site within the built-up core of the town. In addition to the boost to lacking housing numbers and affordable units, the proposal will also deliver Section 106 contributions to schools, library, youth services, public transport, open space projects at Western Hills, and a large contribution to off-site ecology projects at Ivor Springs. These contributions total in excess of £160,000. Just as a final note, Foxbury and us are local people who work repeatedly with other local consultants and trades. Should this application be approved tonight, then the plan is to begin delivery of these homes in the new year, and crucially, the affordable housing units which would be delivered first. This will provide jobs for many local people and help to boost the local economy. We hope members agree that this scheme is highly beneficial to the area and will deliver a truly high quality development for local people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for our speaker? Okay. Are there any issues that you would like to address, Anne, before we go to the debate?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. In which case we will go to the debate. Who would like to speak? Councillor Muir.
Thank you, Chair. There was a lot of objections to this scheme, and most of them were not planning objections. I do like the scheme. I think the design of the houses fit in a lot with Clare Crescent, Nightingale Way, around that area. But I have 6 points I like to bring up, and maybe some of them could be a condition. One of the objectors said that that live in Knights building there, Knights Court, that they would like to see yellow lines down their side of the access road. I think that would be desirable, and I'm just wondering whether that could be a condition so that the developer pays for it. The next is the fence that runs at the back of Western Way. It's got to be opened for the access, but the fence, according to the report, is owned by the developer, and I'm just wondering whether there can be a condition that that fence is kept all the way through, apart from where the access is, and kept in good order by the developer. Again, the street lights or any lights from the development shouldn't approach the gardens or the houses at the back of Aston's Lane and Western Way, if that can be achieved. Sustainability, I've already mentioned a bit about ground source pumps and air source pumps, but that is something that our officers will have to look at for future. Sorry, I left my glasses at home. Oh yes, the working hours. Normally it's 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock on midweek. I like to make that 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Why I say that is that we've got a development, a very large development going on in Ignored Way at the moment for McCarthy and Stone. And there's vast problems with the working hours there. They work till 6, and 2 residents down there are very anti to that time because they think it should be finished at 5. And on Saturdays, it's 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I think that should be 9 o'clock in the morning, working conditions, because most people would like a little lay-in on Saturday morning. And of course, that's one of the complaints in Ignored Way, that they're woken up much early. And the last one is, I would like to see a condition on, we've heard there's £150,000 on 106 agreements. If that's still being negotiated, and I believe it is by the report, that Baldock Allotment Society have got 54 on their waiting list for allotments in Baldock. Now there's some allotments not in use, some on the allotment land allocated to them, that they want to bring back into use, and they need a fence between the allotment land and the county land there. And I wonder whether this fence, I believe, is going to cost well over 16,000, and I'm just wondering whether we could ask for 5,000 on the 106 to go to Baldock allotments. Apart from that, I am willing to propose this development if we can have some of those conditions, please.
Thank you, Councillor Muir. Can I have invite our case officer to comment on whether some of those conditions could be included?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just run through the points quickly. Simon, please correct me if I haven't got my points right. The yellow lines, I believe, I think it's actually outside. I'd need to double check if the area where they want to be yellow lines is inside or outside of the red line application site. I can have a look at the plan in a minute and come and confirm on that. If it's outside of the red line application site, we might have a few issues with that. If it's inside the red line application site, we might be able to impose a condition regarding yellow lines. The issue regarding the fence is covered by condition 5. Condition 5 requires for details and samples of all boundary treatments to be submitted and agreed. So the fence will be covered by that. The working hours condition, we could possibly look at changing that. The section 106 funds, I believe, are all sort of finalised and agreed, and I don't think they can be renegotiated at this stage. I'll just look at the map, the red line site, and come back to you on the first point.
Thank you very much. I mean, I do think, given that this was originally in a site for allotments, that it's not an unreasonable request. It's a shame if it's too late to support the other allotments. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll invite you to come back in a little while when you've had a look at regarding the yellow lines. Meanwhile, I'll take Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. Same comment as the last application, actually. Nice to see the affordable housing. Pity it's in a block that's, in this case, somewhat detached from the rest of the development. Shame to see it like that, but again, I don't think we've got a lot of choice to it. Another little comment I would just make on this report and reports in general is this development is referred to as Knights Templar Court, Knights Court with a K, Knights Court without the K and an S, and Knight Court, no K, no S, all within the same report and sometimes in the same paragraph. We also have Ashton Road, Ashton's Lane, and Ashton's Lane with an apostrophe. Can we just please make sure it's not so confusing, especially where you've got two different Ashtons, because you could have an Ashton's Road and an Ashton's Lane. I know we haven't, but we could have.
Thank you, Councillor Levitt. So maybe we'll have some consistency around the names, that correction. Anne, are you able to respond about the yellow lines, or is it too soon?
It is within the yellow lines. What I'm not sure about is whether or not it's a private road or a Simon, can you assist on this?
Yeah, I'll ask Simon to comment.
Chair, I think the problem with yellow lines is if it's public highway, then you need a traffic regulation order. You'd have to consult local residents, and there can be no certainty that you would get consensus on having yellow lines. If it's on a private road, you can't have yellow lines because you've got no way of enforcing them. So that would, in my view, be a completely unreasonable condition. On the Section 106 point, I think the fence, the purpose of Section 106 is to enable the capacity of facilities to be improved, increased. I can't see how a fence would do that. But what we could do, we could take away the idea that Councillor Muir has come up with, and I'll speak to my Section 106 monitoring officer to see if we've got anything knocking about from older developments that might be able to facilitate that. So if Michael Muir would like to just email us separately, we'll take a look at that, because we do have some funds that are usually sort of looking around for things, but I don't think you could layer it on this development because it's not going to increase the capacity of allotments. You're just talking about maintenance of an existing facility, which is a bit difficult to tie in with the 106, but we might have some sort of unilateral funds that are lying around somewhere that we can use.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe I didn't understand Councillor Muir right on that allotment. I thought it was going to increase the capacity by putting up the fence. Is that, I misunderstood you then, Councillor Muir?
And they want to bring back into use has been disused for probably 40, 50 years. And there needs to be a fence down there to bring this land back into use, because the field next door is county owned and people walk their dogs through there and they whip through the the unused allotment land. And of course, you can't have allotments where the general public can just walk through and damage whatever.
Okay, so I am right in thinking that it would bring additional allotments forward, Simon. So anyway, maybe we can look at that separately. Okay, thank you. Councillor Davis.
Hello, thank you. The disused allotment site, which I believe is the part of the site that NHDC currently own, do we understand whether that was a statutory or a temporary allotment site? I believe the distinction being that if the land was ever acquired expressly for allotment, then it makes it a statutory site, whereas if it was to be used for something else and is being temporarily used for allotments, it's a temporary site. If the site is statutory, do we have the necessary permissions from the Secretary of State to change its use?
Can I ask the officer to respond to that?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. I mean, all I know is that they've not been in use since, well, the last person who was using it was in 2016, and they've not been used since then. But I don't know the status of the land. I'm sorry.
Does anyone else know? Simon, do you know? No?
I don't think that can stop you granting planning permission. I think it would be, that might be in the form of a covenant, in which case the landowner, NHDC, as its estate function, would need to sort that out before it allows a development. But I don't think it's a matter that can stop you granting planning permission. So I think you need to follow that up separately.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. So I've got current, Councillor Davis wants to come back. Okay.
Apologies. Another point that I'd like to raise. I am a member of Baldock Allotment and Leisure Gardens Association and have an allotment at Ivell Springs. I did not believe I had an interest in this item, as neither of these were mentioned in the original proposal. However, the debate is now having brought into it potential 106 spending on Baldock allotments. Could you clarify the status of whether or not I have an interest in this item?
Can I ask Nuranetta?
I think this currently at the moment it's been proposed by Councillor Muir. We haven't actually decided if we're going to do it. It wasn't part of the application that was before us or is before us. It's just something that's been suggested by Councillor Muir. So currently as it stands, I don't believe that you have an interest that's been affected by it. It all depends on how the decision goes as to whether or not it's going to be added to this application, depending on how the debate goes on and whether or not the officers are able to agree on what's going to happen with that money, if they can do it with this application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Muir.
Seeing George has brought that up, I have to declare that my wife she doesn't own an allotment, but she is a member of Baldock Allotment Association. I'm not.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think the problem is because it's your wife. By proxy, you do have you have some sort of interest because it's your partner. Unfortunately, if you're suggesting the monies to go to that particular allotment organization.
So we need to clarify the situation around allotments. My understanding from Simon was that we couldn't add that into this 106 agreement. Is that, can you please clarify that?
I'm struggling to understand the point, and I think it would have been useful if we'd understood that when we were negotiating the legal agreement. But I've got two suggestions. One is you leave it alone and I go and see if there's any spare money in existing pots. That's the safest option. But if you're insisting on tying it to this planning permission, what you could do is nick some money from the open space provision, 13,500 towards green space action plan at Western Hill for footpath repair and resurfacing. I expect the applicant wouldn't mind taking a lump from that and reallocating it to something else, which is open space related. The problem is with allotments is there's no category for spend in allotments in the planning obligations SPD. So whenever we do use money to enhance allotments, we always sort of tack it onto something else like open space, or even, I think we've even used leisure in the past, but I think that would be your options there. I wouldn't introduce it as a new requirement because then you're open to challenge.
Okay, thank you, Simon. That's helpful. Councillor Muir.
On the back of what Simon said, I think it would be useful, perhaps that was it £11,000 that have been agreed on the 106 for open space, that some of that could go to Baldock Allotment Association for the fence.
Let's try and be creative. What I'd suggest is the best approach would be to leave it as out of the 106 agreement.
Yeah, fine.
For me to take it back and see if there's some spare money. If there isn't some spare money, we can revisit that 13,500. But what I'm concerned about is the projects identified at 13,500 by Andrew Mills. And if we took 5,000 off it, you're going to undermine that project. So I think the safest option is to leave it alone and just take it as a feedback. That's because they can go to community grants. There's other ways that they can get that money, isn't there? It's difficult to tag something on at the very last minute of a development like this, which has been in application with us for many, many months. And really, we should have known about that before today, I think, if you wanted to play around with the 106.
Okay, I think we'll take that option. We won't debate this any longer. I think that is a sensible option, a sensible way forward. And I think it's worth making the point that members do need to make officers aware. And I think there is a process through parish and town councils now as well to make planning officers aware of the kind of things that the communities are asking for, and make sure that they actually get lists of things that we're asking for so that they can use that when they're negotiating the Section 106 agreements. Okay, so I believe, Councillor Muir, you've proposed that we accept the officer's recommendation with the conditions that we've enabled that Anne has addressed. Councillor Levitt.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't sure actually Councillor Muir had proposed it. I thought he just proposed the amendments, but what I was going to do was, bearing in mind that the officer in a report said that the road is a private road in the ownership of the developer, that knocks the yellow lines ones on the head straight away. So you can take that one out. The fence is covered by the condition 5. The bit about the allotments, I think, needs to be taken away from this as it's not in the conditions, and we have a tight table there. So I was actually going to move the recommendation that we take it as exactly as the officer's recommendation with no amendments to it, which I think sort of gets out of the problems we were talking around.
Okay, so Councillor Levitt is moving the recommendation as proposed by the officer. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Derbyshire.
Happy to second, Chair. I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Hunter.
I was going to second, Chair, and also point out the fact that condition 6 covers the lighting that Councillor Muir brought up.
Okay, so I'm thinking then that we should vote on that recommendation. Are you happy with that, Councillor Muir? Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else would like to speak before we go to the vote? No, let's go to the vote then.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you, and carried unanimously too. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. I believe our next meeting is in 2 weeks' time on the 18th. We've already done appeals, so I shall close the meeting at 21:12.